during the presentation, just log in to YouTube using a Google account or a YouTube account. You can chat in the live chat. But right now we're going to be doing Introduction to Phone Banking. So I am Jon Lipe. Many of you may see me around the Congressional District. I work for the New York State Democratic Committee as a field director for the 22nd Congressional District. It's my job to support our resistance groups in the area and help promote resistance against the terrible Trump and Tenney agenda, and to really help folks advocate for change in our congressional district. Tonight I'm doing this on behalf of New York 22 Votes, which is a fantastic Facebook group that everybody should join up with. There in New York 22 Votes, we post about and do trainings for and promote door-to-door canvassing, phone banking, voter registration, all of the voter-facing persuasion methods and tools that we have available to us to help change the outcome of local races in 2017 and the congressional race in 2018. Also, I was asked to do this presentation by the folks at Knit the District. Knit the District is the coalition of all of the resistance groups in the 22nd Congressional District. So we have leaders from every group. They meet once a month. They have a steering committee that does a call once a week to help just coordinate our tactics and our message, that we're all squarely focused, at least partially, on the goal of one-term Tenney. So tonight we're going to be talking about a couple things. We're going to be talking about, to start, a very brief introduction to what is phone banking, the basics, in case anyone has never done phone banking before. Then we're going to move into a section about VAN, which is software that we use to do phone banking and door-to-door canvassing and collect data and keep everything nice and organized. It's a very powerful database that it's open to all of our resistance groups to use. And then the last part, we're going to be talking about what it's actually like to do a phone bank and what we can use phone banks for in our district. Like when you show up at a phone bank, what actually happens? So let's get started. So, what is a phone bank? That is an excellent, excellent question. So a phone bank is just when a bunch of folks come together with a list of names to call and phone numbers, dial through the numbers to call up either voters to tell them, hey, there's an election coming up, you should vote for my candidate, or to call up prospective volunteers or prospective members of your group to say, hey, there's a meeting coming up, there's an event coming up, there's a door-to-door canvass operation coming up, won't you please join us on this date and help make a difference? So either phone banks are good for either reaching out to volunteers, recruit more folks to your cause, or reaching out to voters, tell them to vote for candidate X, Y, and Z. So how are phone banks useful? Two ways we're going to use phone banks in the near future. One is to increase membership for our groups. So for example, we can call very active Democrats in the area and invite them to the upcoming meeting. We did this with Indivisible Mohawk Valley earlier in July, where a week before our monthly meeting, we pulled a list of diehard Democrats. We gave them a call. We made over 300 calls, ended up talking to 74 people. And of those 74 people, 35 said they were interested in coming to our monthly meeting. And when we all raised hands at our monthly meeting, about 10, 15 people who were at our monthly meeting were there for the very first time because of our phone bank. That was the first time they heard of the group, and that's why they showed up to our monthly meeting. So if we were to systematically do that repeatedly and with multiple groups throughout the entire congressional district, we really can increase our numbers. The second way phone banks are useful is to build support for candidates. So 2017 candidates, a lot of these races this year in our local races, you can win with a few hundred votes. Some county-led races, 400 people show up to vote. Some town races, it's just a couple hundred. So doing phone banks to reach out to voters to make sure they turn up at the polls can be very important. So how can we use phone banks, our groups? Well, first of all, like I said, we recruit diehard Democrats and other like-minded voters, working families folks, Green Party folks, left-leaning independents, recruit them to our rallies, our protests, our meetings, other canvass operations. Just bring more people into the fold, because there are folks who are just like we were, like a lot of us back in January. We were at home watching the inauguration, aghast at the news, yelling at the Rachel Maddow show every night, and like, I wish I could do something. And there are a lot of folks like that who are still like that today who don't realize that there are a lot of ways that they can make a difference, a lot of ways that they can plug into the resistance and do their part in fighting the Trump-Tenney agenda. So just by reaching out to them and saying, hey, we're a group in your area, we exist, here's what we believe, would you like to join us? A lot of these people who are at home who hadn't heard of us are just waiting to be reached out to. And using phone banks is a great way to systematically contact all these people and bring them into the fold. We can also use phone banks to invite people who are already members to upcoming events. I know that for Indivisible Mohawk Valley, for example, if we were to make a list of all of the people who have attended at least one of our monthly meetings, it would be a couple hundred people. Our last meeting had only 50 people there. So there's probably about 150 people who have fallen off or only attend meetings sporadically. So we could organize a routine phone bank every month where we call up our current members of our group and invite them to the next meeting. Because sometimes somebody may have come to a meeting in February or in June, and then they don't come to the meeting in August or September, and we still want to continually reach out to them, contact them, and make sure that they're still linked up with the group. I know there are other groups in the area who have seen their attendance slightly dwindle over time, and phone banks are a good way to keep people in the fold and keep people engaged. We also can use phone banks to collect stories. When we do press events, when we do rallies and we need a speaker, when we do like letters to the editor, or even for the local campaigns this year or the congressional campaign next year, it's good to be able to identify people who have been personally impacted by the things that Trump and Tenney are doing in Washington. So, for example, if we did a phone bank, we could call people up and ask them, how they feel about the Affordable Care Act and how Trump Care would impact them. And everybody knows at least somebody who has a very compelling story about healthcare issues. And if we were able to mark these people down and saying this person has a very engaging story that really should be shared with the world, then we can use that in the future and help promote their story to reinforce the message of care for all. And then finally, we can use our phone banks to engage directly with voters. With the local elections coming up, like I said, a little effort goes a long way in electing our local candidates. So if we were to use our phone banks to engage with voters, we can tell them, reminder, election coming up on November 7th, here are some great local Democrats who are running that you should vote for. Even if you don't usually vote in odd-numbered elections, this is a very important one. Do you need to ride to the polls? Here's your polling place. That kind of direct engagement with voters to really get them motivated and getting them turned out on November 7th is another important way that we can use phone banks. All right, so that's the first introduction about phone banks, just a very brief overview of them. If anyone has any questions, please type them into the live chat box. Again, if you're logged in, you should be able to see a live chat next to the presentation. So please hop in there and do it. Otherwise, we'll move on. But if you have any questions during the presentation, just type them in there and I'll answer them on the fly. So the next part of our presentation, we are going to be talking about VAN, which is the Voter Activation Network, also known as Votebuilder. So if you hear people use the word VAN, you hear people use the word Votebuilder, just know that for our purposes, those two are interchangeable. They mean the same thing in our context. So VAN is third-party software that the Democratic Party uses to keep track of voters and to keep track of people who work or who volunteer for a political campaign. So campaigns use VAN because congressional candidates, for example, need a lot of votes to win. Next year, our candidate in the 2018 midterms is going to need at least 120,000 votes to win the election, and VAN is a giant database that helps keep track of all that information. VAN is populated mostly by information that gets pulled from the county board of elections. So when you register to vote, you fill out the voter registration form. You put your name, you put your address, your phone number, your date of birth, and that information, at least, is public record. Some things on the voter registration form, like your social security number, that is not public record. But when it comes to your name, your address, your phone number, your date of birth, your party ID, those things are public record, so anybody can go down to the Board of Elections and pull all that information. And what VAN is just the Democratic Party has gone and pulled all this information for all the New York State voters, and they put it in one central database. That way campaigns can use this to contact people who are registered to vote and tell them to vote for our candidates. So just to be clear, if you are registered to vote, your information is in Van. If you have registered to vote recently, it might not be in Van, but it is in there because it's publicly available information that you are registered to vote. About 10% of the information in Van is bought from vendors to try to fill in some gaps, but most of the stuff in here is from registered voters from the voter registration files. So how can we use Van? Normally Van is only usable by actual Democratic campaigns, like our congressional candidate next year is going to use it. Kim Myers last year used Van. Say competitive Senate races and governor's races, and in those races all use Van. If you volunteered for Kim Myers last year or another campaign in the past, you've probably done phone calls or walk scripts, or if you used the Minivan app, all of those are tied into Van. They're all tied into the Central Democratic Party database. But we want to have our resistance groups have access to this too, because it's such a powerful tool. It's really the best way to let all of these groups have a leg up, particularly help us organize, help us grow our numbers, and help us be as effective as possible in affecting change in our area and getting good candidates elected in 2017 and 2018. So we can use Van in the short term. We get access to voter lists. So when we want to contact folks in the area, we want to do canvassing. We did canvassing in Herkimer yesterday, and we pulled walk lists for 2 different county legislative districts. So we just pulled lists from Van of people who lived in District 1 in the town of Herkimer, people who lived in District 12 in the city of Little Falls, and we just matched turf and knocked on the doors that we pulled directly from Van for those 2 specific county legislative districts. And that's the kind of thing you can do in Van to contact voters. We also can use Van for volunteer recruitment. Like I mentioned, we can pull a list of here are all the Democrats who voted in the 2016 primary. So they're diehard Democrats. They went to the ballot box and last, was it May or June, and voted in the New York State Democratic primary. They voted for either Bernie or Hillary. So we know they're diehard folks. Let's call them up, talk to them about Donald Trump, and talk to them about joining our group. In the medium term, one good thing that we can use Van for is helping coordinate all of our resistance groups and help us all work together. What Indivisible Mohawk Valley is doing is at all of our events, our monthly meeting, our protests outside of Tenney's office, rallies, events like that, we have sign-up sheets that are circulating. And since all the registered voters, you're already listed in Van as a registered voter, what we do is we just go in Van and flag, just tag the people who show up at our events. We just tag them as you're a member of Indivisible Mohawk Valley. You are a politically active person who is interested in, future resistance events. Since you're already in the system, all it takes is just tagging you in there, so we know in the future that you're interested in this stuff. You want to get involved, and you want to be an activist to win local elections and improve our community. So if we have more groups, more resistance groups in our congressional districts doing this and tagging their people in Van in the database, then we'd be able to better coordinate all of our groups. And I have 2 examples of how this could really benefit us. One, Madison Shenango Call to Action group. They're based in Hamilton in Madison County. Every other month they do a seminar on a different topic. They've done it on climate change. They've done it on civics. They did one on healthcare. But when they reach out to people, they do it by word of mouth and share it with other groups, but it's not as systematic and thorough as it could be. However, there are 4 resistance groups that I know of in Madison County. There's Madison Shenango Call to Action, there's the Cazenovia group, there's another area Call to Action, and then there's Indivisible Madison County as the 4th one. So if all of those groups tagged their people in Van with, this person's a member of my group, that person's a member of my group, then when Madison Shenango Call to Action did their every other month seminar, they could pull a list of Van up. Here are all the people who are politically active in Madison County. Here are all the people who are members of any resistance groups who live in Madison County, and they can call all these folks up and saying, hey, next month, we're we're doing a seminar on economic issues. Would you be interested in joining us and coming here? When individual Madison County does a voter registration thing, they can pull people and call them up and saying, hey, we're doing a voter registration drive, say at the Boxing Hall of Fame. Who wants to show up and help out with that? If CAS is having a special event and they have a special keynote speaker showing up and they want people to attend, they can pull a list of the people from all the other groups and do a phone bank and engage people. So it'd be a good way for groups to work together and help get more people plugged into more events. And the other example I have of how this could be really useful in the medium term is NITHE District is planning a summit in October. And this summit would be a giant progressive summit. All the members of all the resistance groups would be invited. We're expecting hundreds of people. And if all of these members of all these groups are already tagged in VAN as being a volunteer, being an activist, then we could just pull a list of, here's all the members of all of the groups, let's do one giant phone bank, call everybody. Everybody would get a personal phone call from somebody in the resistance to invite them to this giant summit in October. Rather than having things filter down, or you have to check Facebook at the right time to find out what's going on, we could just do a giant phone bank for everybody in the group. So in the medium term, building up our database of volunteers would help our people work together. So that's another way our groups can use VAN. And then finally, in the long term, using VAN means that we can do get out the vote operations in 2017. So when we do phone banks and door-to-door canvassing to contact voters, we can end up having a list in VAN of, here's all the people who said they were going to vote in 2017, and then we can call these people up or knock on their door in the last weekend before the election this November. And then election day, we know who to target. Who are the high-propensity Democratic voters in these key local races that we're going to be able to turn out by going to their door. So we can systematically target the best, most likely voters to win these low turnout local races this year. And then finally, the other way that VAN is useful long term is data cleanup for 2018. There is, if you've ever done phone banking before, knocking on doors, you've gotten wrong numbers, you've gone to a door and find out so-and-so has moved, or, oh, that's my daughter, she just went to college, or I'm sorry, this person has passed away. There's always going to be churn in the data, in the voter registration data, that makes it inaccurate. But what inaccuracies we find now are things that we can note and fix, and that way we're not doing that data cleanup in 2018. I know that if I'm doing a phone bank and I'm dialing a wrong number, I would rather dial a wrong number in August 2017 than in November 2018, when our time is much more precious. So the more we do phone banking now, the better the data set is going to be of voters in the district that our congressional candidate is using in 2018. And a lot of us are also going to be making phone calls for a congressional candidate next year anyway. So, like I said, we'd rather get the wrong number now than get the wrong number late next year when it's too late to really make a difference. All right, so I promise we're almost done with the VAN stuff, with all this talk about databases and all that. But this is really important, and this is the basis of a good phone bank operation. And I want to emphasize how powerful and useful a tool VAN can be for our resistance organizations. So I'm going to say a couple words that hopefully won't turn anybody off. Data entry. So why is data entry important? VAN is just this giant database of all the registered voters in the district. So why do we have to add to it if we have this giant amount of data already? Well, basically, when we call people, when we contact people, the responses matter. When we contact people, part of what we're doing there is the information that we're giving to them. Hey, our meeting is coming up on this day. Or, hey, please vote for this candidate in this race. But the other important part of it is the information that the person we contacted gives back to us. When they say, oh yeah, I'm totally interested in going to that meeting. Or when they say, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to vote for your guy. Or I'm never going to vote for your guy. I'm voting, straight ticket Republican this year. So it's important to get that information back and enter it back in the database. Because if we call somebody on the phone and they tell us, please never call me again, we want to note that so we never call them again. We want to abide by their wishes. If we go to somebody's house and they've moved, we want to note that so we don't have to, we don't go back there and ask for that person who's not there again. If somebody says they're attending the event, we want to be able to note that. That way, the day before the event, we can call them with a reminder saying, hey, you said you would come to the Indivisible Madison County meeting that's coming up tomorrow. Well, I'm just calling to remind you, tomorrow, it's going to be tomorrow at the Chittenden Library at 6 o'clock. We'll see you there. That way we can follow up with people who would be attending our events. Then things like wrong numbers. You dial up a wrong number, you want to note that, oh, this number's been disconnected, or this number connects to somebody else who's not on our list. That way we keep improving the database. So part of it is, data cleanup, but part of it is also things like confirming event attendance and just recording responses. Like if I'm knocking on doors, for Keith Rubino running for county legislator in Herkimer, and I knock on the door of somebody and like, oh yeah, I love Keith, I'm definitely going to vote for him. We want to mark it down. That way we know, okay, on election day, we definitely need to talk to this guy and encourage him to go vote and make sure he gets to the polls, because we know that this is a sure thing vote for our candidate. So I want to show you a couple things in Van itself. I want to show you the program and your browser. So your screen right now, you can see a couple things. The first thing I want to show is this person. This person here is a good example of data cleanup and why things can be amiss in Van. You might recognize the last name. This is my mother. She is a registered voter. She's been a registered voter since she was a senior in high school. So she's registered in the database because that fact that she's registered is publicly available information. You can see here a phone number listed for her. However, this is not her phone number. So a little story. My mother was a registered independent when she registered to vote, and then she remained a registered independent until 1992. 1992, at the Republican convention, Pat Buchanan gave a speech where he railed against feminists and liberals in a giant culture war, terrible speech. And my mother, the next day, went out and registered as a Democrat in response to Pat Buchanan's speech at the Republican convention. So when she switched her voter registration, that was the last time she submitted a voter registration form. And this was her phone number in 1992. However, she changed her phone number and got a new phone number for her house in 1996. So this is no longer her phone number, but this has been here for the past 25 years. So anytime somebody's tried to do a phone bank using Van, they get a wrong number. Or if they tried to call her, they would be a wrong number. So what you could do instead is, if you wanted to contact her, you'd have to, her address would be listed here as well, because that's on the form. Her address would be under here, under addresses. So when we do a door-to-door canvass, that would be the best way to contact her, instead of calling her up on the phone. But if we were to call her up now, find out it's a wrong number, we can mark this in the system that this is a bad phone number, don't call this again, in which case we wouldn't waste our time keep calling this number. That's not her number. A couple other things I want to show here. In Van, you can create, when you pull a list, there's a ton of different criteria we can use to pull lists of different people. You can pull people by age, which can be useful if you're doing a phone bank during a weekday, in which case you can call people who are 65 and older, who are most likely to be retired and be at home during the daytime on weekdays. And in the evenings, if you want to do a phone bank, you could exclude seniors if you wanted to target people who would be home from work at that time. You can also canvass status. So you can exclude people who you've talked to recently. So if you talk to somebody on the phone or talk to somebody door to door, you can make sure that they're not included in your next list, so you're not bothering them too much. Or conversely, if you want, on election day, if you want to hit up the people you've already talked to, you can pull a list that does that too. You can do a couple things like location. So you can narrow it down by county. So this is set to everybody in United County. You can have it done by city and town, if you want just a particular town in United County. Election district, if you want to hit a specific precinct. So if you want to hit like one of the 10 precincts in Kirkland, you can narrow it down to that. Zip code, street, city. So if you just want to talk to all of the people in Cortland, you can enter that and do that. You also can do it by district. So congressional district, we are in the 22nd. United County is wholly included in the 22nd. You can also do it by Senate and Assembly, and even county legislative district. So if you're a county legislative candidate this year, we can just pull lists that are only for your county legislative district, so you're not talking to anybody else extra. Down here we have party. So we can contact folks, check any or all of these boxes that you would like. So you can contact just Democrats. You can contact everybody but Republicans. You can contact literally everybody in any party, including unaffiliated here, which is, the independent. People with phone numbers, people without phone numbers, and also, finally, voting history. So you can contact people who vote in odd-numbered elections, contact people who are low propensity voters, high propensity voters. You can really drill down to whatever level you want of how engaged person you want to be. So if you're running in a local race where the only way you're going to win is if you turn out people who don't normally vote in odd-numbered years, we can narrow it down. Exclude anybody who votes in odd-numbered years and only include people, who vote in presidential elections. On the flip side, if you're in a district where you want to boost turnout of people who vote in odd-numbered years, you can just show me all the people who voted in 2013 or 2011 and just target those folks. That's fine too. So it's a very powerful tool that we can twist and turn however we want to pull lists that are right for the candidate, right for your group, right for your volunteer recruitment, or right for your voter contact. So there's a lot of potential in this, in using this database. So now is a good time. We're done talking about VAN and database stuff for now. We can pause for a second, do a little intermission Q&A. Again, if you have any questions, look at your browser for the live chat box and type your question into there if you have any questions. We take just a short break. The folks, when you're hearing this, you're about 30 seconds behind where I am. So I'm just going to vamp for a minute till everyone hears this and can ask their questions if they have any questions about the first half. Again, if you have any questions during the presentation, just jump right in and ask them. That's fine. We had some really good questions last night, stuff I didn't cover in the presentation that people wanted to learn more about. So it's not a competition. I mean, which night that I'm doing this has the best questions. But afterwards, I will be writing about who gave the best questions and shaming the people who didn't ask questions. No, I'm kidding. I won't do that. All right, so intermission Q&A, almost over. And then we're going to move on to talk about phone banks. Talk about the actual nitty-gritty, physical, bodies in the room type of phone banks and what our goals are for this. Again, this is doing this presentation on behalf of New York 22 Votes, as well as the Knit the District Coalition. I talked to the leaders in the District Coalition to help put the ideas for this together and hear what they would want covered in this presentation. And this is part of our plan to really emphasize phone banking in the month of August. Our goal is to get all of our indivisible groups or resistance groups up and running and being able to do their own phone banks by the end of August to really boost our numbers and help with get out the vote operations in 2017. All right, let's move on. Second half of the presentation. Can we talk about phone banks now? Talked enough about data entry and pulling lists and all that, so let's talk about the actual phone banks. So our plan, we're going to start with volunteer recruitment. So volunteer recruitment, you have one person calls 20 people and gets more people to join the group, join the event, join the future phone banks, whatever you're doing, recruit more people to the cause. So the plan. Here is our general outline of what Knit the District and others feel is the best way forward for our resistance groups for phone banking this fall. 1, volunteer recruitment first. Volunteer recruitment calls means you're calling generally friendly people who align with you politically, who are interested in learning about your group, who appreciate a phone call because of the information you're giving them. And if you build your numbers now, then you could use that increased volunteer base later on when you're doing voter contact. I mean, you do a phone bank to recruit for future phone banks, and it's like a snake eating its own tail. But it keeps it's like that old snake game. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger the more you eat. Number 2, voter contact as November nears. So as we get into October and November, I know a lot of our resistance groups who are supporting local candidates will want to do more and more voter contact. So more and more calling out people, not to invite them to our meetings, but to say, hey, this guy's running in this county legislative district, you really should support him. And then 3, win local races. Use our giant base of volunteers and our voter contact operations, be able to get people to the polls in our local race this year and win all of these city council and town council and county supervisor and county legislative and mayor and all these other races that we're looking for this year in the local races. And all the while getting training for 2018. So the more we knock on doors, the more we phone bank, and the more of the elevated skills we get, the better shape we're going to be to elect a good representative next year in 2018. Because all these phone banking skills and these canvassing skills are going to be definitely get put to use next year in the congressional race. So let's see, what can we do right now? That if you're like, hey, this sounds really interesting, how do I get started? I want to make a difference. I want to help out with this phone banking stuff. So let's jump right in. The main thing is, the first step is identifying locations where we can hold phone banks. I grew up in Oneida County. I currently live in Oneida County. I am most familiar with the Utica-Rome area, which means that I am less familiar with places in Madison and Cortland and Shenango and Broome counties. So if you live in an area where you'd like to do a phone bank, we need to know where these locations are. I know a lot of indivisible groups have had meetings in church basements and libraries and community centers and the Y, and those are all great locations that can be used for phone banking. So the things we're looking for is seating for at least 12 people. If we have more than 12 people who want to do phone banking, that's a good problem to have. We can cross that bridge when we come to it. We need a place that's accessible in the evening, because that's when people are going to be home from work and we're more likely to reach them. If we're doing a phone bank on the weekend, that's fine too. We can make calls in the afternoon on the weekend. A place with good enough cell reception. So if you don't walk in there and have no bars, but you're able to actually use your cell phone there. Preferably a place with Wi-Fi. We can get by without Wi-Fi if we have a cell phone. Like my cell phone can be a hotspot, so we could use that, but preferably with Wi-Fi, and then also preferably free. If we get to pay like $20 to drop something in the pass the plate at the church to be able to use their room, or make a donation to the library of $20, then that can be fine. But if we're going to be doing it routinely, preferably we'd like a place that's free. So if you know of places around you, just keep them in mind, post them to New York 22 Votes. That's a good location to do a phone bank. Then we can schedule a phone bank there. So we need to find times to run phone banks before upcoming events, ideally around a week out. Eventually, we'd like to see all of our groups doing like 2 phone banks a week, every single week, just to keep our numbers up and also to contact voters as well. But to start with, doing a phone bank, maybe 2 or 3 phone banks before your next meeting would be a great way to start. So once you find a location, we can schedule a phone bank there. So if you just want to go and make phone calls, what do you have to bring to a phone bank? Well, you bring your happy self and your cell phone. I don't think any of our organizations are equipped to provide actual telephones to people who show up at phone banks. So most people have their own cell phones anyway these days. So please bring your own cell phone. Bring a cell phone charger if needed. My phone right now, it's 8:30 at night. It's at 23% juice. If I were making phone calls right now, my phone would be almost dead. So I would definitely need to bring a cell phone charger, especially because phone banks are normally in the evening hours after you've been using your phone all day. So if your phone is low on juice at the end of the day, you want to bring a cell phone charger with you. And then also a laptop computer or tablet, because you'll need to log into Van to access the phone bank script. There are ways that if you don't have a laptop computer or a tablet, and also nobody who's going to the phone bank can bring a spare for you, there are ways we can print out a paper list for you to use instead. And that way, instead of clicking on buttons online, you'd be filling in tiny bubbles on a sheet. A lot of campaigns have used paper lists in the past. Most campaigns nowadays are trying to push everybody to do it electronically. 1, you can go through it faster if it's all online. And 2, if you use the paper lists, somebody has to enter all that data after the phone bank is complete. But if you do it online, the data is automatically entered. So on your paper sheet, if you mark down this phone number is disconnected, I have to go back, or somebody has to go into Van afterwards and mark down that person as a disconnected phone number. Whereas if you're using the online system with your computer while you phone bank, you just mark it as disconnected and their profile in the database is automatically updated. So I'm going to show you a couple other things in Van of what you would look at when you do a phone bank. So here's the kind of thing you'd see when you do a phone bank. If you show up at one of our phone banks, we give you a login and password, give you the website. You go, you log in, come to this screen, come to the phone bank. Here's somebody who might pop up in one of our phone bank lists. It's just a random person in the database. Here's just a dummy script I threw up there. So a question, would you like information on your local resistance group? Yes, no, maybe later. So you talk to them, you ask them this question, you mark down the response, and then at the end you click Save, Next Household, move on to the next person. The next person loads up. You call them, talk to them, tell them the script, get the answer to this question, click Save, Next Household. And the script can be, we can ask any questions we want, whatever we might need. So up here you see this little button that says no, yes. If yes, you've talked to this person, then you can mark down whatever their response was. If you have not talked to this person, there's many reasons why. They could be not home, in which case it just rings and rings, or it goes to answering machine, or somebody picks up and says, oh no, she's not here right now. They just mark down not home, and we'll call them back another day. Refused, as if when they pick up, they say, please don't call me again, or please take me off your list. Mark that down as refused. Deceased, they've moved. They ask you to call them back, in which case they go back into the phone bank system for this current list, so we'll call them back later in the night. Busy, got a busy signal. You left a message, wrong number, disconnected. So there's options here that if you call them up and you don't get to read the script, that you would say that with them. So this is what it looks like when you log in to do a phone bank with Van. Again, if you've done phone banks in the past with other candidates, you've probably seen something very similar to this. And then this page here is what the script page looks like. So we're going to get to this in a minute, but everything we do in Van, we have a script here. This is the script for the phone bank I just showed you. This is also the script we used in our May 7th giant canvassing operation. So it's just one I had on file that I pulled in here. But it's we'll look at this more in a second, but this is what the script would look like. All right, so the next big ask, phone bank captains. So what are phone bank captains? Do you want to be a phone bank captain? What is a phone bank captain responsible for? Why do I keep saying the word captain? Well, what does a phone bank captain do? Phone bank captains schedule events. So they say, hey guys, we're having a phone bank on this day to do volunteer recruitment or voter contact. I've reserved the room. I've called up the local library, and their upstairs meeting room is free for us, and we're going to have it for that night. I've written a great script for it. I've edited the current script in there to tune it towards our local group. I logged into Van and pulled the list of here are all the people we're calling. We're calling diehard Democrats and working families people in our district. During the phone bank, the phone bank captain would be there to manage the phone bank on site, make sure everybody has what they need. Everybody can connect to the Wi-Fi. Everyone can log into Van. Answer any questions that come up, because there's always questions that come up during the phone bank. You get somebody on the phone who's giving you a response that you didn't think of, so you have to ask the phone bank captain, hey, they're asking me, do I have to be a Democrat to join our group? Or they're asking me, hey, I'm a Republican, am I still welcome there? And you have to ask the phone bank captain. I don't know the answer to that. So that's what the phone bank captain would be on site for troubleshooting and answering those kind of questions. And then the phone bank captain would be responsible for entering the data afterwards into Van, whether it's paper sheets that people filled out or the attendee sheet about who showed up to make phone calls. That way the people who showed up to make phone calls can be tagged in Van as, oh, these people like doing phone banks. So we do phone banks in the future, you know who to invite to them. So this is all the things the phone bank captain would be responsible for. Two things about this, though. One, it doesn't have to be just one person who takes on all of these duties. You could have a few people in your group that take on a few of these duties. You could have one person who's an expert on Van who pulls the list, sets up the phone bank, writes the script, and enters the data afterwards. And another person who schedules the event, reserves the room, and then manages the phone bank on site. So you could divide up the work that way. This is not something we expect people to do right out of the gate, But the goal is for the resistance groups who want to build their numbers through phone banks and want to help local candidates with phone banks, that there will be people interested enough to want to take on these duties by the end of the month. That way, when September rolls around, by the end of the month of August, that way, when September rolls around, we'll be able to spin these off, and people can just be wholly autonomous and doing their own phone bank thing in their own groups. And the second point about this is you'll notice that this list here of phone bank captain duties, none of them actually involve calling people at home. They don't involve cold calling people or using the phone bank software. We want everybody to try out phone banking, especially if you've never done it before. We want you to at least get your toes wet and see what you think about it. Cold calling is difficult. Nobody really enjoys doing phone banking the very first time, or the very first call you make. It's tough to make yourself do it. A lot of people, though, end up enjoying it. I enjoyed doing it. When we did our volunteer recruitment phone bank for Indivisible Mohawk Valley in July, people ended up really enjoying it and laughing and really having a good time talking to people on the phone. But if it's really not your thing, if you try it and you're like, I'm never making phone calls, I just can't do this, then you could still be a phone bank captain, because this is all logistics stuff. This is scheduling, reserving the room and scheduling the events and writing the scripts and doing all these things that needs to be done to support everybody else who is making the phone calls. So even if phone banking, like actually making the cold calls, is not your thing, you still can learn these important skills and put them to work and support the group in other ways. I guess, this is for our first phone banks in the month of August. I'll be on hand to help out and at as many places as I can. This is my main goal in the month of August, is to train as many people as possible for doing phone banks. I will be your phone bank captain in the month of August for your groups all over the district. But by the time September rolls around, we want to have so many phone banks that I can't possibly be at them all, which is why we'll need phone bank captains in each of our resistance group to take on these responsibilities. Because if we have a phone bank in Cortland at the same time a phone bank in Binghamton is the same time as a phone bank in Rome, I can only be at one of those. So we need phone bank captains to take on these responsibilities and be educated and be trained in doing all of these things to support the phone bank operations in other places. Okay, so this concludes that portion of our presentation. Oh, I wanted to show this too. Go over the script one more time. I talked about phone bank captains be responsible for writing and editing the script. A lot of phone banks will probably use a similar script, particularly if you're doing voter contact. Like all of the voter contact scripts will probably ask a question: how likely are you to vote in the 2017 election? How are you going to support candidate X or candidate Y? So those kind of questions and those kind of parts of the script can be shared among groups. But you also can go in, if you're the phone bank captain, and edit the script to put your name of your organization. If your organization is more comfortable with this or that question or this or that wording, make it your own, make it comfortable, make it something that your people in your area, in your group, really want to do. So this is the kind of thing the phone bank captain would become familiar with, is how to edit and create new scripts in Votebuilder as well. So you'll learn, if you want to be a phone bank captain and work with Van, I will train you on all this behind-the-scenes stuff and how to use this software. Let's open it up for any concluding questions before we wrap for the night. I know one question that's come up a few times. Can I make calls from home? I have a cell phone or a landline at home. I have a laptop computer or even a desktop computer, and I have Wi-Fi at home, so why can't I make calls at home instead? Why do I have to go to the phone bank? There's a couple reasons for that. One is, in my experience, and I've worked on a few congressional campaigns and Senate campaigns in the past, in my experience, people are very reluctant to make cold calls when they're on their own. And they are far more likely to do it when they are surrounded by other like-minded people who are also having a good time doing it. I know myself, I have been guilty, where I told a campaign, oh yeah, I will definitely be able to make calls at home, that's fine, I no problem doing it, and then I go home and I'm like, well, actually, I want to go out to dinner with my wife, I want to play with my kid, there's this TV show I really want to watch, I have all these emails I have to respond to for work, and then it gets to be like 8:30 at night, and I'm like, oh, I never made those phone calls I promised to do. Oh well, I guess I'll have to do them later or another day, and I just never get done. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you make every effort and your heart's in it. You want to help, but when you're at home, other things get in the way. And the other more important reason why we don't want people to make calls from home, at least not right now, is like I mentioned earlier, things come up. Something you can't log into Van anymore. Something goes wrong with that, or you have somebody on the line and they're asking a question you don't know the answer to, and it's really important for it. Or you can't quite remember. What was our meeting? What was the address for it? Was it 910 Fake Street or 1900 Fake Street? What was that address again? And having all the other folks around you. You have the phone bank captain, and you also have 10, 12 other people also making phone calls that you can turn to and get the answers to these questions. And if you need troubleshooting help, the phone bank captain is on hand to help out. So if you run into problems at home, you're kind of out of luck. But if you run into problems at the phone bank event itself with all your folks there, then you really can get help and keep moving along. So eventually, if you're a super volunteer and a super phone banker and you're dedicated and you're 100% going to make calls from home and you have no problems or you're experienced as a phone bank captain yourself and all that, then yeah, that's fine to make calls from home. It's just more efficient otherwise and more fun too, just to get everybody together for an event. So Chris has a question. Do we need any particular computer or cell phone platform to run Van? For phone banking, no. For your cell phone to make phone calls, you just need the phone. That's it. So literally a flip phone from 1992 or 2002 would work for that. When you're making these phone bank calls, you're going to be using your own phone number, and that's what's going to go out, which is good too because people are going to see, oh, it's a phone number from my area. If you're calling people in Casanova and you live in Hamilton, then oh, well, it's somebody in Madison County's calling me. That's good. It's not some central switchboard in Washington D.C. that nobody's ever going to pick up. For the computer part, you just need internet access and a web browser. That's all. Van, it's not a downloaded program. You go to a website and just log into the website. So if you can go to Facebook or you can check your email on your computer, then that's good enough to use Van. It's nothing more intensive than that. That's a good rule of thumb. If you can use Facebook on your computer, it's good enough for Van. All right. Are there any other questions before we wrap up for the evening? I guess one other question I get, how can we use the data we collect long-term, i.e. 2019 and beyond? Because if you have your resistance group and you want to think, oh, we want to elect local candidates in 2017, and one-term 10E is our overarching goal now, but who knows, 2019, 2020, there's going to be local races in 2019, there's going to be state senate and assembly races and a congressional, our candidate's going to be running for re-election in 2020, not to mention the presidential primary and the presidential race in 2020, and our indivisible groups and our resistance groups will want to keep going past the congressional midterms this year. That's not going to be the end of our work. However, I can't guarantee the groups are going to have, be able to utilize Van in the exact same way. However, what we can do, worst case scenario, is we can print out lots and lots of lists, export all the information you could possibly need from Van, lists of volunteers tagged with, their current phone numbers and whatever else they have that they supply to our resistance groups. Just nice, neat Excel spreadsheets of here's Casanova call to action gets a list of everybody who's ever gone to a Cas event. Here's the Excel spreadsheet. So if at any time you no longer would have Van access or you're worried about putting information into Van because you're worried about it going away at some point, if that day ever comes where your resistance group no longer has access to Van, it's very easy for us to just export all the information you need and you can just take it from there. So there's no scenario in which you would be plugging away and putting all of this work into it and then one day Van get taken away and you guys would be left high and dry. Like there's no scenario in which that would happen. All right, well, are there any other questions I can answer before we wrap up? I hope this has been thorough enough for people. Even if you arrived late and you're wondering about, you want me to go over all the data entry stuff again for Van, I can certainly do that if you guys want. So if you enjoyed the webinar, if you found it helpful, please tell your friends. I'm going to be doing it once more Wednesday night, Wednesday at 8 o'clock, so 2 days from now. Same time, same channel. So it's bit.ly slash ny22 training. Also, you can do YouTube search ny22 training. That's the channel name. And I'll save one of the videos from here and share that, post it on YouTube, etc. So people can watch it after Wednesday if they can't make it to Wednesday's webinar. And then if any resistance groups are interested, yeah, presentations be archived. Yeah, where I'm recording this as well. It'll get posted to YouTube, and then yeah, if you can't make Wednesday's webinar, you can just share the video and share it with any other folks in your group to watch it. However, if you're interested in me coming to your group, or do you want to have, because this is almost an hour long training, 45 minutes to an hour, so it would be difficult to like fit this into one of your meetings, one of your monthly meetings, because you have a lot of other important business to do. But if you ever wanted to do like a special meeting or a special training, just name a time and a place, and I can be there and run through these slides and do the same presentation for your group. Even tailor it for your group if you have any special needs that I need to know about it. And answer questions and interact and all that. So if you'd like me to do this presentation in person, just let me know, and I can be available to do that as well. But if there's no more questions, I think we will wrap for the night. So thanks everybody for tuning in and watching. Thank you for the questions. I hope you found this informative. Again, the next steps to take is let's get started phone banking. Start looking for locations in your area where you can host phone banks, whether that's libraries or the Y or churches or even your own home if you have seating for enough people there. Then we can start building up our numbers and our resistance groups, start contacting voters directly, getting them amped up about the 2017 election, and then start laying the groundwork for a successful 2018 and our overarching goal of one-term tenny. So thanks, everybody, and I'll see you on Wednesday. I'll see you around. Thank you.